So a few days ago, Venerable Tapa was talking about how if we do any practice regularly, then it can become a bit rote. And I've found myself in my daily prayers sometimes kind of just rattling it off, moving through one phrase or visualization to the next, kind of engaging with it somewhat, but not necessarily really letting it go into my heart. And during the winter retreat, we might have lots of time to do the designated practice. This time our Amitabha practice in the session is kind of a luxury of time to go through that. But then our other daily commitments we have to do in the breaks. And on some days, that's fine. And on other days, when the schedule starts to fill up a bit, it can be quite squeezed. And on those squeeze days, when I feel squeezed, I found it quite useful because I can notice that pushed energy, that I don't have enough time energy, quite easily. And on one of these days when I felt squeezed, I just stopped myself where I was and tried to reconnect in with what I was saying. And this was at the point where I say 3 verses to renew my bodhicitta motivation, to refresh my bodhisattva vows or precepts. And there's one particular verse and one particular line that really touched my heart, and I wanted to elaborate on that today. So that verse is, "In order to fulfill the aims of myself and others, I shall develop a supreme enlightened motive, and towards all sentient beings, my invited guests, I shall act with supreme enlightened conduct. May I become a Buddha to benefit all." So, as I've mentioned before, when we shared after retreat during one of our go-arounds, in this retreat, I got to see more closely how anger arises in my mind and how I deal with it. And so when I recited this verse 3 times, I had to ask myself, is that the way that I'm relating to people here as my invited guests? So is this the way that I approach the world? Is this the flavor of my mind towards the 24 other people that we were sharing this space with, that I could see quite vividly how much they were doing to benefit everyone here to make this retreat possible for myself? And at that point, not really. So what does regarding other sentient beings as my invited guests mean? So obviously it's about, in this context, it's about generating the heart of bodhicitta. But how do I get myself to the point where that is the flavor of my mind towards everyone I encounter? And where that flavor or intention of mine actually translates into actions of body and speech, so that ultimately I can get to the enlightened acts of supreme enlightened conduct that I've actually committed myself to in these verses. So I came to 2 points where, at this point in my practice, I can make the idea of bodhicitta really tangible for me and start to begin to transform my mind. So the first is getting familiar enough with the kindness of others so that the wish to repay that kindness arises really strongly in my mind. And the second is seeing that our enlightenment, which is our ultimate happiness and freedom from suffering, depends on each and every sentient being, that I can't miss out a single one. So Venerable Children spent quite a considerable amount of time in this retreat during the BBCs, emphasizing the practice of seeing the kindness of others and how we can engage with that. And what I found particularly helpful is to look beyond the intentional kindness. So I can identify very clearly how each one of you here has intentionally benefited me, done things specifically to help me as a person, or just as a member of a group. But then there's the unintentional kindness that we all receive from each other and that we receive from all sentient beings. And Venerable Children beautifully captured this at her talk at North Idaho College, where she used the example of the road workers that she'd spotted on the way in, and said that, how kind it is for these road workers to be out working all night in the cold just to benefit other sentient beings. I think that was kind of the way that she phrased it. And then a young man in the audience quite naturally asked, well, they might be out, can you really call that kindness? Because aren't they just out there, are they really wanting to benefit others, or are they just wanting to get a payback? And I thought that's quite a fair question to ask. And the answer was, well, it doesn't really matter what their intention is. The fact is that if they don't do what they do, we suffer. In this case, we suffer from bad roads. And on the flip side, by just their existence, we benefit. So I think that if I really acquainted my mind to seeing the myriads of kindness I receive just by others existing, I would have a deep gratitude and love that would be the flavor of meeting everyone as my invited guests. People that I welcome with open arms with the intention to repay their kindness by giving them joy, by giving them happiness, by trying to appease their suffering in any way that I can. So that was the first point, by focusing on kindness, specifically unintentional kindness, achieved through just others being alive, that I can generate this loving intention, this heart of warmth, where it's really a joy to behold anyone who's before me. And the second point was seeing that my enlightenment depends on each and every sentient being, that I can't miss out a single one of them. And when I was thinking about this, at first it sounded odd, because the essence of enlightenment is that we're only aiming for enlightenment in order to benefit others. But because if we're just aiming for our own happiness, then we could aim for nirvana or personal peace, which is a much easier, quicker goal to attain. But there's something that I found powerful, is bringing the big and sometimes intangible goal of enlightenment right back down to the person in front of me, in that I'm attaining enlightenment to benefit this one. That my enlightenment totally depends on how I think and relate to this one. And that it shifts my energy away from being focused on all the things I need to do to attain enlightenment, that I've got to do to attain enlightenment, to right now, this sentient being right in front of me is the most important thing in the world that I can attend to. So I've heard Venerable talk about how we can do this with just little bugs. We can, in the hall or outside, just saying, my enlightenment depends on this one, and this one, and this one. And I find that breaks the appearances of this life quite nicely, in that I see the potential of that bug, their potential for enlightenment, and can relate to them on that level. But also in terms of the people that we live with, to really connect in that I'm attaining enlightenment for you, and for you, and for you. And that if I don't include you in my sphere of altruistic intention, that I can't possibly attain enlightenment. So how do I work with this right now? That's by trying to cultivate the attitude of generating this feeling of, please, my invited guest, I welcome you into my home, into my heart, and I accept whatever you bring to me, whether it be your happiness, whether it be your hurt, whether it be your anger. And I will do my best to hold that space for you and try and be of benefit as much as I can in whatever space I'm in right now. It sounds like a wonderful attitude to have. So may we all cultivate an increasingly expansive mind that's able to see the benefit that we receive just from others' mere existence. They're not necessarily having any intention to benefit us at all. And to allow that strong wish to repay their kindness to arise. And to hold that intention to repay their kindness in the context of bodhichitta and the wish to attain enlightenment for this one, and this one, and this one. And I think in the process of doing that, then the attitude of seeing all sentient beings as our invited guests will naturally arise and carry us to our goal of enlightenment very joyfully.